Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Bob, appreciate the heckling already. It makes me feel comfortable up here. Welcome to the September 28th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm President-elect Kevin Kassir, filling in for Becky again. Yes, another bad penny coming back. I keep coming back. She's fighting a little COVID, so that's why she's not here, but I can tell you she is a trooper. We had our board meeting yesterday virtually, and she's doing very well, getting better. I just didn't want to come here today, so understandable. Another super meeting planned for you today, so we'll get right to it, and another impressive keynote speaker that we have with us today. But first, I think at times we take for granted the quality of food and service we have here. I mean, as we come week after week, it's sort of just you become numb to it. But once again, I mean, the carving station, whatever. How about giving those folks if you can hear us, thank you. Now we're going to have my buddy Carter Smith come up here to give the moment of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, four-way test, and then we get to greet everybody. So, Carter, go to it.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Good to see you all. Like many of you, my favorite season is summer. As of last week, we have now transitioned to fall. And we've said goodbye to some of those fun summer activities, being outside, warm weather, patios, lakes, boating, you name it, all those activities. I've been honestly feeling a bit down about this transition, saying goodbye to these activities and looking at the impending cold weather and wintry conditions. I have a few quotes that I want to share with you that talk about seasonal transitions that have helped me over the last week or so. I'll share a couple with you right now. The seasons may bring different experiences, but they can also serve as a reminder of all that we have. The changing of the seasons is a reminder to live in the present and accept each moment as it comes. In any season of life, practicing sharing gratitude and remaining present will bode well for all of us. And I want to leave that with you here today. All right. Now do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the five-way test.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun?
Now please greet your neighbor.
Jeremiah.
Hi. Sorry, I wasn't on your call. Great job.
Good to see you. You bet.
I'm glad to see we're all going to get together. I think it's so good.
Yeah. So that's a great idea.
Well, was it Aaron?
Sure.
Okay.
It was yours. I'm giving credit to you. Good job. Good work.
Nicely done, Mike.
Sorry. I got you. It's so funny. I was like, Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for that. We're now going to welcome, we actually have 4 guests today, so we're going to welcome those. I will introduce you, ask you to stand. Please remain standing, and then we will recognize the 4 of you all at once. All right, so first up, in the back there, we have Caleb Tilstra with Bankers Trust. He works right along Mason Powers and a guest of his, so thank you for coming. Next is Morgan Allen, the daughter, there she is in the back as well, the daughter of Chaz Allen, and she's a graphic designer with the LS2 group. Next, we have Kimberly Strope Bogus.
Oh, you got it right.
Please stand. She's a candidate for the Des Moines City Council's the open first ward seat, and a guest of Sean Mullen. And last we have Stephen, and please remain standing, everybody. And then we have Stephen Vickery, visiting Rotarian, and the son of our 50-year member, Jim Vickery. So, welcome everybody. Okay, it's that time, that exciting tumbler time we have, and we're asking you to donate $5 to the Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation. If you don't have one of these green stickers, and of course, if you do have one of those green stickers, we always welcome that as well, or any way you want to give to the foundation, which allows us to do the great work that we do. So thank you for that. Now we're going to have a couple people come up from our community service committee. It's great that we actually do things in the community. And first we have Rich Leopold and also Ann Starr, if you want to come up as well. Rich is the vice chair of the community service committee, and Ann's on the committee. And they're going to talk about a couple opportunities we have a way to give back to the community. So Rich, and then Ann.
Thank you. And that comment about the food, I don't know if I ever take it for granted. Afterwards, I need a nap. It was so good. Everybody roll out your mats, take 5 minutes. So no, thank you for having me up here today. I was going to, again, talk about an event called Trick or Trees. So this is the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, and they have been a great partner. They've been doing some really cool things down there. They're going to have an event this year on Saturday, October 8th. So this is their description. Trick or Trees is a family-friendly event offering interactive activities and entertainment. Volunteers serve as activity table leaders, engaging guests to learn about trees and spooky botanicals throughout the botanical garden. These activities are easy to learn. Volunteers have provided information, so they'll hold your hand through the whole thing. Examples of activities include gourd guts, carnivorous plants, and bat pollination. This role is fun for those who are outgoing and enjoy helping people learn. Our shift, again, October 28th, it's a Saturday, is the morning shift from 10 to 12:30. You guys show up a little bit before, stay a little bit after, but that's the commitment that we're looking for. So we got a few people signed up. We need more. So if that fits into your calendars and you have interest in going to the botanical gardens and helping out a little bit, please do. I'll have one of these with me, and then there's one also at the table outside where our name tags are. Thanks.
Okay, settle down. It's so good to see everybody. It's such a warm and welcoming environment here. The food's good too. That's just sort of the extra treat on top. So it's good to see everybody. So my name is Ann Starr. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Orchard Place. I've been a member of the Rotary Club here for a little over 8 years. And we have done this coat drive with Operation Warm for a number of years now. So let me tell you a little bit. I'm sorry, Carson, but my favorite time is fall. So I'm loving this. And with the fall brings the cooler temperatures. Haven't seen those yet, but they are right around the corner. And when the temperatures get cold, for our kids, what that means is they're scrambling for warm clothing to wear. So we serve about 7,000 kids and families a year at Orchard Place. And through that, we know that about 85% of those families live in poverty. And so we've got children that we're serving in Des Moines Public Schools. That's a large school district that we serve, but lots of areas of Des Moines, so lots of the metro area. And those kids need warm coats to wear, and along with that, your dollars are leveraged even further because we have additional donors then that come in and match these funds. And they go ahead and do the hats and the boots and the mittens or gloves, depending on the age of the child. So this is a time of year where you can think about, did you ever see a pile of leaves you didn't want to jump in, right? Did you ever have a trick or treat Halloween, which by the way, I love the botanical one because it's safe for kids and families, right? No question, that's beautiful. But, you know, did you ever trick or treat when it was snowing? How many, I took kids out when it was snowing on trick or treat on Halloween. So when the weather gets bad, kids are gonna need coats to wear, and we have really, really needy kids out there who are very deserving of those and will benefit greatly. Just being able to go outside or walk to school and know that they've got a good warm coat to wear, a hat, gloves, and the boots. So another kid here who never met a slush puddle I didn't want to jump in. If you remember back to that, or if you had kids that were the same way, right? So the boots are super important for our kids too. So we last year raised several $1,000s here at Rotary for this, which leveraged and got us about 500 sets of coats and hats and boots and gloves. And this year we're shooting for about 300, but hoping that we do like we did last year and can go over that. We get our coats through Operation Warm, which has been an organization that has been partnered with by Rotary. Fabulous coats. I mean, unbelievable the pricing on these coats because they've got durable, durable zippers, buttons, snaps, hoods, all of that, pockets, everything that a kid really needs to be able to go outdoors and play, right? That's kids' work, is play. So, you know, don't you? Yeah. All right, so thank you for your generosity. I know some people at our table have already started signing up their donations. That's very exciting, so thank you for doing that. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me or Kitty too, because Kitty's been through this several years with us. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Rich, for what you're doing for us. Isn't it great that we have leaders like this in the metro area coming into our club, taking the ball and helping us make an impact in the community? This is where the rubber meets the road of why we're here today. So please support both those initiatives. Now we have Jeremiah Turhart to come up and introduce our keynote speaker. Jeremiah.
All right, thank you, Kevin. So today I have the privilege of introducing Jacob Nicholson. So he is our Chief Operating Officer for the state of Iowa, and this is a position appointed by Governor Reynolds. He's a member of the senior staff on her team, and he's in charge of a variety of different initiatives. So when Governor Reynolds has an initiative, things he's working on right now include the school access, promoting healthy families, the fentanyl crisis, apprenticeships, really trying to help with the government alignment, and just all in all, helping the state run smoothly. If you look outside, it looks like you're keeping things running really smooth today, Jacob. I didn't see his emergency cell phone go off a single time over lunch, so great job on that. Beautiful weather. So he is a native of Iowa. He's from Slater, Iowa State grad, bachelor's degree in political science. So help me welcome Jacob to the stage here.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me to speak here with you today. So I thought I'd start with just a little bit of background about myself before I get into kind of the main topic that I want to talk about. So as stated, I'm the Governor's Chief Operating Officer, the Chief Operating Officer for the state of Iowa, and I'm a bit of an anomaly among Governor's office staff. So typically when you see Governor's offices across the nation, they'll typically have members from their campaign team, or they'll have people from the private sector come in and serve on their senior team. So Governor Reynolds, when she selected me to serve in this role on December 1st, I think she recognized that in order to transform state government, you need somebody who really understands state government. So I've been a state government employee for the past 15 years, and I actually started my time in state government as an unpaid intern almost 20 years ago. So I spent my time at the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management starting as an unpaid intern. I worked really hard, and they decided to turn that internship into a paid internship. I graduated from Iowa State University, and I went off and I spent a couple of years with the federal government out in Washington, D.C. My wife and I decided we wanted to come back to Iowa and start a family, raise our children the way we were raised. So we moved back here to Iowa, did a short stint in the private sector, and then realized that where my passions lie is in public service. I never felt more rewarded than when I was in public service. So I accepted a position at the state of Iowa again with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management back in 2008, and I worked my way up through that organization, eventually becoming the Response Division Administrator and being responsible for leading the state's response to disasters and emergencies from the State Emergency Operations Center. So during my time there, I was there for the derecho, I was there for the COVID pandemic, I was there for the 2011 floods on the Missouri River, the 2019 floods on the Mississippi and the Missouri River. I was there for about 25 presidentially declared disasters and had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people while I was there. One of those great people was Governor Reynolds. We spent about 3 months of quality time at the State Emergency Operations Center at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was during that time there that the governor recognized the importance of emergency preparedness and response and just the ability to be a collaborative force within state government, bringing multiple agencies together for one common cause and purpose and mission. So before I get into what I'm here to talk about today, the number one question I get from most people is, what does a state chief operating officer do? What do you do? And I really break that into 3 categories, right? My job is broken into 3 categories. One is the issue of the day. So the state of Iowa Executive Branch has over 17,000 employees. We've got 16 departments. We have a $28 billion annual operating budget. And I can assure you that every second of every day there is something broken or something on fire, and eventually it does get elevated up to the governor's office. And so I spend a good chunk of my time taking those calls and helping resolve some of those issues to make sure that, again, our departments are providing the services that Iowans expect and deserve. Second part, I'm a senior advisor to the governor on state government operational matters, right? The governor has a huge scope of what she's responsible for, and she needs advisors to help advise her on some of the specifics and the details of how state government is structured, how we operate, what our policies and processes are, and that's a function that I fill for her. And then third, I'm a driver and implementer of the governor's vision and goals, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of the governor's most recent goals. So the first is the goals including supporting success at schools that Jeremiah mentioned. So the first bill that we passed this last legislative session was the Students First Act, creating education savings accounts for students across the state. We also passed additional flexibility for the public school use of funds through their funding formulas. Another major goal that she had this last session was building workforce through apprenticeships. So we've invested millions of dollars in registered apprenticeship programs in various fields, including teachers and paraeducators, which our program is the first in the nation in serving as a model for other states to follow for a registered apprenticeship program for teachers and paraeducators. We've set up registered apprenticeship programs for trades like plumbers and electricians. We have health careers, including nurses, certified nursing assistants, mental health professionals, EMS, and paramedics. The list goes on. And we've also, through this last legislative session, created the state level Office of Apprenticeship to more effectively manage and rapidly develop more registered apprenticeship and more new and responsive registered apprenticeship programs. Another one of her goals this last session, really the purpose of my time here today, is to talk about aligning state government to better serve Iowans. So this initiative aligned 37 cabinet agencies and reduced those down to 16 to make it a more manageable cabinet, streamlined governance of those departments. We eliminated 500 persistently vacant positions immediately, and the overall alignment effort is projected to save about $215 million over the course of 4 years. So let me talk a little bit more in detail about state government alignment, what that is, how we did it, and then I'll be able to take some of your questions at the tail end of this. So The alignment initiative represented the first major restructuring of Iowa's executive branch in nearly 40 years. And the goal was to improve efficiency and reduce costs by aligning our agencies with similar business operations, thereby achieving the best outcomes for Iowans. We wanted to optimize our resources, our experience, and our subject matter expertise across the executive branch. So this effort involved extensive planning and research efforts. So we hired an independent consultant, Guidehouse, and they started their work in the summer of 2022. So a full, about 9 months before the legislative session, we kicked this thing off with our research to look at benchmarking against other states, to figure out how other states are doing this, to see what the best practices and what states have the best outcomes in different service areas. We also consulted with all of our agency heads. We brought them all in and we talked to them about what their business looks like, how they're currently structured, where they think we could better align our services, and that feedback contributed to the decision making that ultimately led into the drafting of the bill. At the end of the day, Senate File 514 was a 1,300-page bill, and it moved through the legislative process with minimal technical amendments. So the original vision and proposal was effectively implemented and carried out through the legislature. Let's talk a little bit about what first, as it went through the process, it did result in significant opportunity for public input and comment from the legislature. I personally sat through 14 hours of subcommittee hearings, both in the Senate and the House, answering questions about what the bill did and what the bill did not do. And what I'd like to do today is just talk to you a little bit about what this bill has done and how we've implemented it. So I'll start with one of the first and largest sections of the bill, about 800 pages of the bill, in fact, consolidated our human service-centric agencies into a single Department of Health and Human Services. So what this did is this took formerly a Department of Aging, our Volunteer Iowa agency, Early Childhood Iowa, the Department of Human Rights, and the Iowa Child Advocacy Board, and it combined them all within the Department of Health and Human Services. And when you look at consolidating aging within HHS, that's going to result in better customer service to older Iowans that are receiving social assistance, and we're also going to be able to enhance our federal funding drawdown through Medicaid by having that appropriate coordination between those services for aging Iowans. The Department of Human Rights offers programs like LIHEAP, and they work with the community action agencies. We can integrate those programs now within HHS to create a one-stop shop for social assistance for Iowans. The other piece with human rights is that it's going to allow greater access to resources through the Bureau of Refugee Services, to include a coordinated use of federal refugee support funding. Previously and prior to alignment, we had one office that got all the federal money, and we had another office that had all the subject matter expertise and connections to the communities that needed that money, and they weren't coordinating very well. It was not a very effective use of that federal funds, but now we have those offices merged, and we're able to fully leverage the use of those funds. Volunteer Iowa already ran the Retired Senior Volunteer Program and the Refugee Rise Program that were supported through the Department of Aging and through the Department of Health and Human Services already, so it's a logical alignment for Volunteer Iowa to join the Department of Health and Human Services. The next thing that we did was the creation of a primary entity for licensing and regulation, the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing, to include most professional licensing, building codes, and construction permitting. Most licensing boards, we consolidated our administrative law judges. We shifted and moved Iowa OSHA and the Division of Labor into this new Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing, adding the licensing function to that department. What this did is it created a one-stop shop for a regulatory department focused on the health and safety of Iowans. One of the other items that we moved within this department was the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. So the Iowa Civil Rights Commission is a small organization, and they suffered from kind of slow response times for the cases that they were hearing. So by moving them in and attaching them to this larger Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing, they're able to leverage the administrative support from that larger department, process through these cases more quickly. We moved the State Fire Marshal and Building Codes group into this department as well. By moving these functions in, along with inspections for boilers, elevators, plumbing, mechanical systems, electrical inspections, we created a single point of entry for building construction and permitting and licensing. So right now, or prior to alignment, if you were looking to build a building in the state of Iowa, depending on what you were trying to put in that building, you'd have to jump and hop between 4 different agencies to get all the licensing and permitting that you needed to build that building. If you were building a hotel, for instance, and you had a swimming pool, you had to talk to the Department of Public Health and Health and Human Services. If you had an elevator, you had to talk to Workforce Development, right? If you had an electrical system, you had to, or sprinklers, you had to talk to the Department of Public Safety. Now, after after alignment, we consolidated all these functions for building and permitting into a single agency, and there's one entry point for Iowans looking to construct a building. We also we moved professional licensing. Professional licensing prior to alignment existed in 11 agencies, and consolidating this professional licensing allows for administrative efficiencies and improved customer service. And one of the ways that we're executing on that vision is we actually are in the procurement process for a single statewide licensing system. Right now we had, like I said, licensing systems in 11 different agencies, and they all had their own licensing system, different platform, a different website that you had to go to, different forms that you had to fill out. We're consolidating that into a single licensing system so that all that information can be combined in one place, and it is a familiar interface for users going forward. The Iowa OSHA and Division of Labor, previously this was with the Iowa Workforce Development Agency, and what we found was that businesses were hesitant to engage with Iowa Workforce Development on business engagement and growing their workforce because, well, the regulatory entity that came in and did inspections and levied fines against them was also part of workforce development. So they were a bit hesitant to fully engage with workforce development. So we recognized that. We pulled that function out of workforce development and moved it into the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing. OSHA's inspections align very closely with DIAL's other inspections as well, so it's common business practice and work. The Division of Workers' Compensation, we moved all the administrative law judges from the Division of Workers' Compensation into the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing, where we had all the other administrative law judges. So now we have one collective resource of administrative law judges, and we can apply common standards and expectations for turnaround time on case hearings, and we can follow and process these metrics in a way to make sure that we're providing prompt service to Iowans. Next, we merged our education-focused entities into the Department of Education, including Board of Educational Examiners, which was previously a separate entity, the School for the Deaf, the Iowa Educational Services for Blind and Visually Impaired, the Governor's STEM Advisory Council, and the College Student Aid Commission. So with the Board of Educational Examiners, we created a one-stop shop for school administrators and educators. Previously, the Board of Educational Examiners, educators had to go separately to a separate entity for Board of Educational Examiners. Now schools can go to one entity and get the services that they need, whether that be something related to their educators or something related to their school administration. College Student Aid Commission supports Align DE to serve students through the continuum of their education, from pre-K all the way through higher learning. So we've aligned the College Student Aid Commission into the Department of Education to make sure that their efforts and strategies are aligned with the broader continuum of services pre-K through higher ed. Governor's STEM Advisory Council, this is providing a foundation to scale their innovative practices across the Department of Education and hopefully through K through 12 schools throughout the state. Right now, only 1 in 5 students receive STEM instruction, right? And we've had the Governor's STEM Advisory Council in place for some time. We're looking to scale and grow that to more students across Iowa. The School for the Deaf and the Iowa Educational Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Now we have one state agency. These two services previously rested with the Board of Regents. However, they're providing services to students K through 12. So now we have one agency with primary jurisdiction over all of Iowa's pre-K through 12 students. We shifted our major revenue generating entities into the Department of Revenue, including the Iowa Lottery and the Alcoholic Beverages Division. So with Lottery and ABD, we've aligned those revenue generating entities under one department. They all use the same GovConnect platform, allowing businesses selling alcohol and lottery tickets to engage with one agency versus 3. Another item that we did was we aligned 8 separate and inconsistent local community-based corrections districts with the Department of Corrections. So these CBC employees, there were about 1,000 of them that were local districts. They all had the benefits of a connection to the state. We paid for their salaries, they had state health insurance, they had state retirement, and the state retained tort liability for all of their employment actions. Through this alignment, we will be able to enhance public safety and promote equal justice by ensuring that we have consistent evidence-based practices across the 8 districts. We created a new Department of Insurance and Financial Services, combining the insurance division, the banking division, and the credit union divisions. So this new department is led by the insurance commissioner, and what it does is it elevates all 3 entities and boosts Iowa's profile as a national leader in the insurance industry, and it allows us to speak with one voice for the insurance and the financial markets in the state. We combined the Iowa Veterans Home with the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is resulting in better coordination and outcomes for Iowa's veterans, as well as operating efficiencies. And we're also, we aligned workforce programs and funding into the Iowa Workforce Development Agency. So what we found is there's over 100 workforce programs across state government in multiple agencies. And what we also found is that Iowa Workforce Development, the state's primary workforce agency, had control or say over less than 25% of all the federal workforce funds that are coming into the state. So we took measures to move those workforce programs and consolidate them into the Iowa Workforce Development Agency. We also took the Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services, which was its own independent agency, and we moved them within Iowa Workforce Development as well to create a one-stop shop for workers and businesses. So right now we have these things called American Job Centers that Workforce Development runs, and what we were having happen was that if you were a disabled Iowan and you walked into an American Job Center and you said, hey, I'm looking for assistance with work, Workforce Development would have to say, oh, no, we can't help you, we're going to send you over here to IVRS. Now, after alignment, we have IVRS integrated into our American Job Centers where they can provide those services whether you're disabled or not. All Iowans can receive services for workforce at a single location. We shifted our disaster assistance programs to the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the state's primary disaster response agency. So we had a program called the Iowa Individual Assistance Program that rested with Health and Human Services. Really didn't belong there. The Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management are the ones that kind of coordinate the state's response and resources to a disaster, and this is an important grant program that offers assistance to Iowans following a disaster. So by moving that program into Homeland Security and Emergency Management, we're able to increase information sharing with other disaster response partners, and we're also able to effectively implement lessons learned and continuous improvement in the program. We integrated the Office of Drug Control Policy within the Department of Public Safety, and this allows us to unify our policy goals for drug enforcement. And ODCP is a small office of about 4, and they were already co-located within the Department of Public Safety's building. One of the other items that we did, it was actually not part of the alignment bill, but it was a significant a shift that we did to some of our law enforcement resources, is that we moved the DOT Division of Motor Vehicle Enforcement into the Department of Public Safety. And I want to talk a little bit about that and why we did what we did there and why we did it the way we did it. So we intentionally ran this bill as a separate bill through the legislature because this movement had been attempted in the past, a couple of times actually, and it had been unsuccessful. The key difference this time was we conducted a thoughtful, thorough analysis of the transition items, and we used dedicated one-time funding to cover the costs, and we had some intense outreach efforts with interested stakeholders here. What it resulted in is the creation of a dedicated commercial motor vehicle unit within the Department of Public Safety. It involved the movement of these workers across different collective bargaining units, which is challenging in and of itself. It resulted in a shift in retirement benefits. And you would not believe the differences between these law enforcement officers at one agency from law enforcement officers at another agency. There were differences in sick leave payout, shift differential, standby pay, life, health, and dental insurance, all the way down to how much money these officers receive for a cleaning allowance. They're all performing law enforcement duties within the state. There's no reason why we should have those differences. Now with this bill, we moved them all into the Department of Public Safety, and they all have the same benefits as a law enforcement officer within the city. Resulted in one-time training for these DOT motor vehicle enforcement officers to get them up to speed with the DPS Academy. We transferred equipment and vehicles to allow consistency. We had instances where the Department of Public Safety was preparing to purchase a mass purchase of body cams, for instance, and we had the Department of Transportation also preparing for a mass purchase of body cams. 2 different body camera brands, 2 different systems, 2 different storage mechanisms. No reason for that. And so what this allows us to do is be more consistent in our radios, in our policies, in our equipment, and ultimately save some money over time. This also resulted in greater career path flexibilities for these DOT law enforcement officers. At the DOT, they had one capability that they could serve as a law enforcement officer. They could be a commercial motor vehicle enforcement officer. At the Department of Public Safety, they can be a pilot. They can transfer to the Division of Narcotics Enforcement. They could be part of the Executive Protection Unit. They can be part of the Division of Criminal Investigation. The list goes on and on. They're really growing their career growth potentials for those officers. The last thing I want to touch on that the alignment bill did was it created the Boards and Commissions Review Committee. So there's been some news about this recently. You may have heard the purpose of the Boards and Commissions Review Committee was to analyze all of the statutorily created boards and commissions in the state and make a final recommendation on their effectiveness. So I had the pleasure of serving on this committee as well, and we submitted our final report to the legislature and the governor earlier this week. We identified 256 boards and commissions that are found within Iowa Code. And following our review on their effectiveness, our recommendations included eliminating 111 of those boards and commissions, bringing that number down to 145 is the recommendation, which represents a 43% reduction to the total boards and commissions in the state. We believe that this is an important part of the process to begin this conversation. However, now we've done our part. Now it's up to the legislature and the people of Iowa to chime in and determine what needs to exist for our boards and commission going forward. So, to talk a little bit about implementation. So the law was passed with bipartisan support and signed into law on April 4th. That left us with just under 3 months, because the effective date was July 1, to make all of these moves within state government. So we created an alignment implementation team that included hundreds of employees and included a dedicated project manager with each agency. This is a senior person in each agency that had the authority, with the director's consent, to make moves and decisions that need to happen in those agencies to make this happen. We used a detailed project management tracking system and project reporting for both pre-July 1 tasks and post-July 1 tasks, because the work didn't end on July 1. We still have more work, and we continue to meet on a weekly basis to talk about the additional tasks that we have to get done. We had over 800 users trained on this project management system, and we tracked over 480 primary tasks that were all completed by July 1 within that 3-month period. So our goal was simple for July 1. We needed to make sure the lights came on, that everybody's email worked, and most importantly, everybody got their paycheck. This involved transitioning nearly 3,000 state employees from where they were before to where they needed to be on July 1. Additionally, we completed 319 secondary tasks post-July 1, and we have 285 tasks that are still in progress that we will continue to work through over the course of this year. These are things like aligning policies. You'd be amazed at the discrepancies between policies of different agencies, simple policies like vehicle use policies or telework policies, those types of things. Great difference among agencies, and now that we've merged agencies into each other, we have to align those policies to make sure that we're treating our employees consistently. So we're already seeing the benefits of this alignment more broadly as well, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So at the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing, I talked about how we consolidated all of our administrative law judges into a single agency. So the COVID pandemic created a huge backlog of unemployment insurance appeals into the unemployment insurance ALJs. We had a backlog of 5,400 cases that were waiting to be heard. We were able to reduce, by leveraging the collective capability of all of the ALJs within the state, we were able to eliminate that backlog down to 0 in just 3 months' time. It was estimated that it would take 18 to 24 months to eliminate that backlog, but we did it in 3 months. So we consolidated our Public Employees Relations Board ALJ into this larger central panel of ALJs. So per ALJs typically heard about 7 cases a year, and their turnaround time on a case was about 12 to 18 months. Now our turnaround time on per cases is 30 days. That's how long turnaround time is on per case. We've also been able to reduce the wait for licensure. For example, the Board of Medicine has a multi-state or a national compact with other states that recognize reciprocity for physicians across state lines. Before alignment, there was about a 60-day wait to process a reciprocal license for a medical professional across state lines. Now we have a 1-day processing time for recognizing those licenses, and there's more to come. So this comprehensive review and analysis conducted through alignment really made one thing abundantly clear to us as we were moving through this process, that our agencies were far too siloed. While each agency has its own area of expertise and unique capabilities, we saw agencies become insularly focused, building a culture and mindset that was separate and not part of the larger organization that was the state of Iowa. This resulted in redundancies and inconsistencies, like I mentioned, in our practices. It resulted in unhealthy competition between our departments and agencies, where they were poaching each other for employees, and they were tweaking their telework policies or some of their other fringe benefits to try to incentivize the best employees from other agencies, and that creates holes in those agencies that we have to then backfill. It creates a real problem. It results in wasted costs and spending, and ultimately poor service to Iowans. The state executive branch had operated this way for far too long, and we're now taking action through alignment to bring our teams together and modernize our approach to government and service to Iowans. We're building a culture centered around collaboration and unity of effort. We're leveraging the collective power and force of the state government for the betterment of Iowans. And we're operating more efficiently and effectively with the resources we have available to us. And one example of this shift in our approach and culture, in addition to the transformational work of alignment, is our new branding effort. In July, the governor unveiled the state of Iowa's new brand. It's a single brand and mark, the freedom to flourish. But this is more than just a new marketing scheme. This initiative is designed to reset our identity as an organization and as an employer. Our separate legacy logos, color palettes, they feed into that old mentality, and it works against our vision as one team. So those legacy marks will be phased out, being replaced by the new consistent brand to be adopted by each agency. And each employee will still identify with their own unique agency, its values, mission, and purpose, but under the new umbrella of the state of Iowa. So in closing, I do want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak and share with you the exciting things that we're doing with state government alignment. This endeavor has been and continues to be an adventure each and every day, and it would not have been possible without the visionary leadership of Governor Reynolds and the support of the legislature and of Iowans across the state. I'm so proud to be part of this transforming Iowa state government to better serve all Iowans for generations to come. And with that, I can take any questions you may have.
I can't even imagine how enormous that, what you just explained was. I mean, with it though, I heard from a number of people in the education sector that education's not really being moved over to, but almost melded into workforce development. That sounds like a pretty bad idea to me, but could you maybe address that a little bit?
Yeah, so the question is education being kind of melded into workforce development? And so there's a component of workforce development that is connected to education, and it's primarily in the field of work-based learning, right? Iowa's educators are educating students to pursue their passions and goals, and sometimes those, in most cases, those passions and goals do involve moving into the workforce. And so I think we have to be very deliberate and thoughtful about coordinating what our workforce needs are as a state, what our current needs are and what our future needs are, with what our strategies and goals are for education. But I can tell you that the areas where we took education programs and moved them in were workforce-focused programs, right? Adult education, literacy, those types of things, STEM, internship, registered apprenticeship programs. That's where we're looking for a greater overlap between the work that's happening in our K-12 schools and our higher education institutions and our workforce development agencies. We want to make sure that we have a consolidated, coordinated approach to our work-based learning efforts in this state. And a lot of that it shows up through our registered apprenticeship programs and our investment in registered apprenticeship.
I have a leadership question. So the interdependencies are mind-boggling. And so can you talk a little bit about the hard skills and soft skills that you brought to this project, whether from Iowa State trained or Slater raised, and what were the things that you had to really, you had to dig in hard, or you had to learn because they didn't come naturally to this position?
Right. So the question was about the soft skills and the hard skills that I had to bring as part of initiating this effort, and kind of what I had to dig in hard with to really learn and bring to kind of executing this implementation. So I will say that when you talk about what I had to learn, I was stunned. Again, I've been a 15-year employee of state government. In my time at the State Emergency Operations Center, I worked with every agency. And as going through this alignment process, we found out things in our government, our executive branch, that we had no idea existed. We found out that the state, for instance, owns 700 head of cattle. We found out that we have thousands and thousands of acres of farmland across the state that we own and lease, and we are landlords because we have private citizens that are living on that property, right? We found all kinds of things, and so what I had to learn was that state government has a tendency, and bureaucracy has a tendency to just grow if left unchecked, and we had to dig very deep, and there was a institutional resistance to doing things different than what we had done before. And that's something that we found universally across the board. Now, our leaders in state government were fantastic. They worked with us, they gave us great ideas on how we could align items, but we would have been remiss if we didn't recognize that there's a natural institutional resistance to change, especially within large government bureaucracy. And we had to contend with that as we moved through this in order to find the right balance for what alignment needed to be. And we also had to contend with that as we moved to implement alignment. You would think telling somebody, well, it's the law now, the legislature passed it, we have to do it, you'd think that would make it easier. But it didn't, because then it became a reality for everybody. And then we had to move through implementation in a very aggressive timeline. As far as the soft skills, I found myself in a position where I was meeting and talking with, dozens of agencies, quite frequently, that all have competing priorities and interests, and I had to develop a way to move us all towards one common goal without making any single agency feel or believe that they weren't valued. And that was a challenge. It was a challenge for me as a leader. It was a challenge for our agencies, but I think we successfully pulled it off.
We're all familiar with the governor's chief of staff role, which David held at one time. I wasn't even aware there was a CEO. How long has that been around? And is there still a chief of staff, and how are the roles different? You make the trains run on time, I assume.
That's right. Yep, I make the trains run on time. So to answer your question, yes, the chief of staff role does still exist. So the chief operating officer role was created by Governor Reynolds in 2017. So it's a relatively new position to her office and to state government. And not every state, most states have an equivalent role, but they don't all call it the COO role. Some call it the Chief Transformation Officer, some call it the Chief Administrative Officer. But they all do effectively the same thing. They make sure the trains run on time. They make sure that the agencies are coordinated and operating efficiently. They make sure that they implement these strategic initiatives so that the agencies themselves are working together and providing the services to their constituents that they deserve and expect.
So who reports to who?
Yeah, so the chief of staff role still exists, and Taryn Frieders was actually the chief operating officer before she became the chief of staff, and I replaced her, and so we both exist within the office and we serve different functions. The chief of staff, works very closely with the governor and all of the staff in the governor's office, and my primary function is to work with all the cabinet agencies. So I work with all the agency directors to make sure that their initiatives are being executed accordingly.
Yes, I used to work for the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, so I'm curious, did that commission make the cut? And if so, does a person investigating civil rights cases report to a commission, or is responsible to the Civil Rights Commission, or are they responsible to employees of inspections of appeals?
Yeah, that's a good question. The question is about the Iowa Civil Rights Commission, and in both places, the linemen and the recent boards and committees, boards and commissions review committee, there's no recommended change to the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. The only change with the Civil Rights Commission is that they were an independent entity, and now they are administrative. They're attached administratively to the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing. So to answer your question about whether or not investigators for civil rights answer to the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing or answer to the commission, the answer is they answer to the commission. The commission is still independently appointed by the governor. The commission has an executive director that runs the commission. But what they are able to do now that they're administratively attached to the Department of Inspections, Appeals, and Licensing is leverage some of that administrative support, right? So the processing of cases as they come in, those types of things. There's the actual cases themselves are still heard by the commission, and that's not delegated out to any other entity within DIA, or any other agency for that matter. Do we have one more? Or is that's all we have time for.
Jacob, really appreciate you taking your very busy schedule, obviously, to come chat with us. If you're able to chat with some other folks with other questions, appreciate that. Also, really thank you for your 15 years plus service to us and making Iowa the great place that it is to live. So thank you for all that you've done for us. In honor of your presentation today, we are donating a book to the Des Moines Public Libraries. We've got a Rotary Rosie Reader van that travels around, and that book will be in that van, making those books more accessible to kids. So thank you, and thank you again. Upcoming meetings. We have the district governor that will be coming, so we'll get an opportunity to learn more broadly about what's going on with Rotary on October 5th. On October 12th, We have Mike O'Donnell coming from Cirrus, a great organization contributing to businesses all around the state of Iowa. That will be a good one. And then lastly, October 19th, we have the Iowa DOT Director, Scott Marlis, so we'll learn about what's going on there. With that being said, thank you for being here today. Thank you for making this club the great club that it is. We are adjourned.